Have you ever looked at a biology paper and felt like you were trying to read a secret code? Well, today we're going to crack it. We're taking a real exam paper and turning it from a simple list of questions into a fascinating story about how life actually works. All right, let's dive in. So here's our guide, a 2018 AQA science paper. But look, forget about the marks, forget about the time limits. That's not what this is about. For us, these questions are a launchpad to explore some of the most amazing processes happening inside you and all around you at this very moment. So here's the plan for our journey today. We're going to start with the invisible war that's constantly being fought inside our bodies. Then we'll jump over to how plants create energy for the entire planet. After that, we'll zoom right in on the building blocks of life, the cell. And we'll wrap things up by looking at the incredible systems that power the human body. All right, first up, your personal security detail. And I'm not kidding. Every single second of every day, your body is fighting off invaders in a microscopic war. So let's go meet the soldiers on the front line. So the paper kicks things off by showing us this image of a white blood cell and asks how it defends the body against pathogens. Now, that's just a fancy word for any nasty stuff. We're talking harmful bacteria, viruses, fungus, anything that can make you sick. So what's their battle plan? How do they actually do it? Think of these cells as the absolute special forces of your immune system. They've got this incredible three-pronged attack. First, they can literally engulf and just digest the invaders. Then they produce these things called antibodies, which are kind of like custom-made heat-seeking missiles that lock on just specific pathogens and mark them for destruction. And third, they release antitoxins to neutralize any poison the invaders might be pumping out. Just amazing. Okay, now here's where it gets really interesting. We can actually see the results of our immune systems getting a massive boost, but on a huge national scale. This graph, it shows measles cases. Just look at the numbers for 2012 and 2013. Pretty high, right? And then look at 2014 and 2015. Wow, what a staggering difference. So if you actually do the math from the graph, just like the paper asks, the drop between 2012 and 2015 is right around 1,900 cases. I mean, that is a massive drop. And that number isn't just a statistic. It represents a huge win for public health. So the big question is, what caused this incredible turnaround? Well, the answer is one of modern medicine's absolute greatest triumphs: widespread vaccination. See, by introducing a safe, inactive version of the virus, vaccines basically give our immune systems a training manual. They teach them how to spot and fight off the real enemy before it can ever get a foothold. It's like giving your body the enemy's playbook.
And this brings us to a really crucial point the paper touches on. You've heard of antibiotics, right? They're powerful drugs, for sure. But here's the catch. They only work against bacteria, like gonorrhea. They are completely, totally useless against viruses, like measles. And that is why preventative measures, like vaccines, are so incredibly important for viral diseases.
Okay, let's switch gears. We're moving from our own internal battles to the engine that powers pretty much all life on Earth: photosynthesis. You could say it's how plants literally eat sunlight. So the paper asks a simple question. What are the two key products of this amazing chemical reaction? Well, plants take in carbon dioxide and water, and they use light energy to cook up two things that are absolutely vital for life. First, glucose. That's a sugar they use for energy and growth. And second, the oxygen that you and I are breathing this very second. But how do we actually study this? Well, the paper shows us a cool experiment. A student is measuring photosynthesis by counting the bubbles coming off a piece of pondweed at different distances from a light. So at first, you just get a table of raw data. It's fine, but it's kind of hard to see what's really going on. But then you plot that data on a graph, and suddenly the story becomes crystal clear. And what's the story? It's simple and it's elegant. The further the pondweed is from the light, the fewer bubbles it makes. In other words, less light means less photosynthesis. Less food, less oxygen. It's this super fundamental relationship that basically underpins entire ecosystems. All right, from whole ecosystems, we're now going to zoom way in. We're talking about the universe inside a single cell, the fundamental building block of every living thing. Okay, so the paper describes this experiment with potatoes and sugar water to show us something called osmosis. Now, it sounds complicated, I know, but it's really just about water trying to find balance. Think of it like this. The potato cells have this membrane that's like a really picky bouncer at a club. It lets the small water molecules through, no problem, but it blocks the bigger sugar molecules. So what happens? Water naturally moves from an area where there's lots of it, like pure water, to an area where there's less of it, like a sugary solution, to try and even things out. That's exactly why the potato in pure water actually gets heavier. It's just soaking up all that water. Right, so cells don't just sit there, they multiply. And this is the cell cycle. It's life's amazing process of renewal and growth. It happens in stages. In stage 1, the cell grows, and this is the super important part, it makes a perfect copy of all its DNA. Then, in stage 2, which is called mitosis, the nucleus splits in two. And finally, in stage 3, the whole cell divides, creating two brand new identical cells, and the cycle begins again. You know, this incredible power of cells leads us to some really complex topics like therapeutic cloning. And the paper does a good job of laying out the different sides. So the advantage, well, you could create stem cells that are a perfect genetic match for a patient. That means there's no risk of their body rejecting them. But there's a big disadvantage. The process involves creating and then destroying a human embryo. And that raises some really significant ethical and religious objections. See, biology often pushes us to ask these really big, important questions. All right, for our final section, we're going to zoom back out. We're looking at the incredible machine that is the human body, focusing on the powerhouse systems that keep us all moving. Okay, just check out this data. When a student is just sitting at rest, they're breathing about 12 times a minute. Makes sense. But start walking, and that rate doubles to 24. And then go for a jog, and it just leaps all the way to 60 breaths per minute. Now, this isn't random. This is your body's support system kicking into overdrive. So, the million-dollar question is, why does this happen? Well, when you exercise, your muscles are working way harder, and they need more energy. To get that energy, they need more oxygen for a process called aerobic respiration. But at the same time, this process creates more waste, specifically carbon dioxide. So your breathing rate just skyrockets to get more of the good stuff, oxygen, in, and more of the bad stuff, carbon dioxide, out. It's simple, and honestly, it's just brilliant. And who's the hero at the center of this whole delivery system? The heart, of course. And as this diagram shows us, it's not just one pump, it's two working together side by side. The right side has one job: pump blood a short distance to the lungs to pick up fresh oxygen. Then the left side takes that oxygen-rich blood and does the heavy lifting, pumping it to every single other part of your body. And that right there explains a really key feature of the heart's design. The question is, why is the muscle wall of that left ventricle so much thicker than the right? Well, it's because it has a much, much bigger job to do. Pumping blood all the way up to your brain and down to your toes takes a whole lot more power than just pushing it next door to the lungs. It's a perfect example of form-following function. But even this incredible muscle needs its own blood supply, right? It gets that from the coronary arteries. So coronary heart disease is what happens when those vital arteries start to get clogged up with fatty deposits. This narrows the pipes, it restricts blood flow, and it basically starves the heart muscle of the oxygen it desperately needs to keep on pumping. So there you have it. From a single cell to the entire human machine, we've taken an exam paper and turned it into a blueprint for understanding life itself. We've turned tough questions into incredible answers. But you know, the best part about biology is that it's a living story that's still being written. Every discovery just opens up a brand new chapter of questions. So what do you think the next chapter will reveal?